What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and in today's last spell video, I'm going to explain 5 beginner mistakes. These aren't the only mistakes that beginners will run into, but these are ones that I know that I ran into, as well as others that I've seen, so being able to understand what they are and how to get around them will make your life a lot easier. Before we get started, of course, if you enjoy the content, make sure you give it a thumbs up, leave your thoughts down below in the comments, and then check out the description box for all the cool links like Discord, Twitter, Twitch, and Patreon if you want to support the channel. Without further ado, tip number 1, not using your second weapon slot. It may be a little hard to see at first when you're not used to looking at the equipment sheet, but you do have a backup weapon slot. There are many benefits to this. Even if your weapon is not being wielded, you get the bonus stats from it, and swapping to it does not cost anything. It doesn't cost any AP, it doesn't cost any movement, it's free. So you can swap to whatever weapon you have equipped whenever you want, and you can use all of the abilities as long as you have the AP and the mana. The reason this is so powerful is because it's very hard to waste AP when you have access to a second weapon and a bunch of skills, as well as a lot of weapons do have synergy with each other. There are simply too many to list in terms of what has synergy with each other, but there are just tons of options out there, so make sure you explore those and use your backup weapon slot. Even if you don't need the extra attacks from it, there might be some buffs, some debuffs, or some stats that you can put on from your second weapon that helps your primary. The second mistake, base economy. So your haven, aka your base, has a lot of things that can be done to it with the buildings, so you can choose to build mines that help you get materials and gold. You can build crafters which pump out gear. You can build defenses. You can build utility things like the seer, which helps you push back the mist, etc. There are so many things you can do with the base, but understanding when to go for what and how to use the economic tools that you have are keys to victory. For most intents and purposes, you can try and get workers as quickly as you can, so using your first iterations of gold on houses to get more workers, upgrading the houses to get more workers, and then focusing on gold mines usually lets you branch out into whatever other builds you're trying to do. Even then, it's not even required that you always have max workers and max gold mines. It helps, but if you are on a short map, for instance, there are a few levels in the game that only go 7 or so days, which means you don't have the time to build up all of these gold mines, these scavenger camps, and all these crafting buildings to pump out gear. So make sure you're understanding how long the haven is going to last and how many fights you have to win before you heavily invest in any economic strategy. Economy and gear and getting stronger heroes is the way you win the game. The reason I suggest workers and gold to start out with is because that gives you the most options, and gold can pretty much buy everything you need to get running. Mistake number 3, target priority. It's easy to see a wave of monsters and go, holy crap, that thing in the back is huge and looks really mean and can kill me with one thought, but all the little monsters in the waves are also important. It doesn't matter if you slow down the big elite enemy in the back if all the little runners and clawers get up to the front and start destroying your walls. Which means it's important to have a mix of strong single target damage as well as area attacks or things that just get rid of lots of small monsters at a time. The easiest way to deal with this is to slow down the big monsters while you kill all the small ones, or let your defenses do that if you have a ton of them. It's not even so much that the little monsters are tough, it's just that they do check to make sure if you're spending AP on them and paying attention. Usually they only go down in a couple hits. This also means that pure damage isn't the only thing you should be focusing on. Lots of weapons have access to debuffs or other things that help impair enemies and slow them down, which lets you pick the right targets each turn. Mistake number 4 is piggybacking off of the last one actually, and that is the fact that debuffs are very good. You should always be checking your weapons to see what debuffs they have access to. If you have stuff that can slow down the enemy, as in taking away their move points, stunning them, or destroying their defenses like armor and resistance, there are a lot of useful debuffs in the game. And then when you consider the fact that opportunism is a stat which gives you bonus damage against debuff targets, that means that you should always have some kind of debuff out there, at least on one of your units. You would be surprised just how much time and breathing room a well-placed debuff can get you. My final mistake that new players make is that they have builds that are inflexible. It is good to have a general idea of where you're trying to take a character, as in, am I making a mage, am I making a momentum user, an archer, for instance, but you should always be aware that you may need to pivot out of your build if it's not working. This gets harder to do the more perks you put in on the character, but if you're only within the first couple levels, it's okay to just swap out. The easiest example I can give are poison builds. Poison can be a really good damage type if you can get the stats and the gear and all that for it, the perks as well. But sometimes they just don't show up. Sometimes you don't get a hero with the poison perk tree. Sometimes you don't get the weapons that have poison skills that are appropriately leveled for you. Other times when you're picking stats at your level up, you never see poison. So instead of forcing poison damage when you're not getting the gear or the stats for it, pivot out. You may be a little bit behind on something else, but if you're finding the gear and the level ups for that, then start picking it. Another example is that you could be running some kind of physical build that has momentum, like sword for instance, and your second weapon could be a scepter. What gives you the option to pivot out of a build like this is that if you are picking momentum or movement points and AP and stuff like that, or accuracy and crit for your skill ups, if you're not finding better swords, you can swap over to a different momentum weapon like a better scepter or a pistol or a spear. There's so many things you can do with your builds that if you do need to change, make sure you always have the option to do so. Alright y'all, that's gonna do it for this one. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, let me know what you're thinking down below in the comments. And if you want to see more content like this, as always, my name is Shuffle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.